Okay, all right, back for round two. Thanks everyone for being patient with that. Sorry about the technical issues. Is everyone able to hear me now? Can you hear me now? Maybe not. Can people hear me? Hello, hello, hello. Type yes if you can hear me. Okay. No, I can't hear you, Steve, unfortunately.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So we'll start off with the questions. And as usual, if people have more questions, we can sort of ask them in the chat and then we can address them at the end, or maybe hold them to the end and then we can sort of ask them and we'll keep track of them and go first come, first serve. All right. Take it away, Eleanor.
All right. So Luke has two questions. His first question is, what is the longest you can dry brine steak in the fridge before it goes bad?
You can, well, it will never really go bad. It will just go very dry. So you'll get just too dry. It'll just turn into beef jerky at the end of the day. So if it's salted and it's not touching anything, then it's not going to go bad. It's not going to grow bacteria. And so it'll just get too dry and hard and it won't be a very nice texture, or it might be a great texture. Beef jerky is awesome, but you don't want to do that to a nice steak, I don't think. And so I find that for like the big thick steak, like big thick steaks, that like even as much as 2 weeks actually is okay. It gets just a bit too dry after that. Thinner steaks, but still thick, like an inch and a half. Probably a good sweet spot is around 5 to 7 days, and that's what I think is like a good sweet spot for texture and flavor. But to each their own. But that's sort of what I do.
Okay. His second question was also, do you recommend supplementing with liver or anything else during pregnancy?
Yeah, I don't think you need to. I think it's individual. I think sometimes people are just going to need a bit different nutrients, and in pregnancy, you're going to need sort of more of everything. And while you can be fine just eating normal muscle meat, it might be that you maybe need a little more liver every now and then. So if liver tastes good and you enjoy it, go for it. That's probably that's a positive feedback that your body wants those nutrients, and so you can just listen to that and just have some of that. And obviously, if you're deficient in something, you should definitely take something like liver, or even supplement if you have to. It's very rare that people have to, but if you need to, you need to. And pregnancy is definitely one of those times you want to make sure you have all the right nutrients. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people that have just done pregnancies on just ribeyes. Like the Andersons, they did all their kids on just ribeyes. They've just eaten ribeyes, so it should be fine. But if you like liver, eat liver, and that's probably a sign that your body wants it if it tastes good.
The next question is from Mike, and he has said, Dr. Berry just put out this video saying A1C doesn't include glycogen from fructose, glycation from fructose, and there isn't a test that does. Perhaps that's why Saladino brags his A1C is normal with so much fruit. It's a shame there is no test. It may awaken more people to fruit hazards. Can you talk a little bit about the reason why we don't see the effects of glycation from fructose in our A1C?
Yeah, so that was actually news to me. Fructose is actually has more, it has stronger glycation sort of properties than glucose, as meaning that it will physically fuse to other things at a higher rate than glucose will. But that was actually something that it sort of makes sense intuitively. Like you are measuring the amount of damage to your body from high blood sugar, and high blood sugar is glucose, right? So that makes sense, but I never really thought about it in those terms before. So that's something that it is just something that I would have to look into the mechanisms and what they're actually testing for. But it makes sense. I mean, they're looking for a glycation product of glucose and hemoglobin. So that's just a very specific molecule, bound up damaged molecule that they're looking for. But yeah, you're right. That could be a reason why people who eat a lot of fruit and honey aren't necessarily seeing the full repercussions and ramifications of their actions just yet, but they could. And when you work out a lot, you will burn some of this stuff up. You will turn it into glycogen, and you will make energy out of it, and you'll use that energy. So you could offset a lot of the fructose that you're eating as well. But it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be as good as it could be. But it would be interesting to get a test that could test for that more. But so I guess that's the thing. If you're eating these sorts of things, you just don't be fooled by a lower HbA1c, because it's not necessarily the full picture.
Okay. The next one is from Ben, and he asks, bone in or boneless, which do you prefer? Do you eat the cartilage around the bones of the meats? I saw this in one video of a Maasai man cleaning a bone like it's no one's business.
Yeah. I've always done that. I was like a kid when I had like drumsticks and the chicken. I would just eat that. I would eat the cartilage around the outside and on both sides. And I always loved the cartilage. And I like any steak, but like steak on the bone, like a ribeye, like a big tomahawk. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just more primal. You just have it on the bone. You just like gnawing on the bone, chewing on the bone. I'm like a dog or something like that, just gnawing and chewing on this thing. And I chew as much of it as I can off. And so, getting all the little bits and cartilage and connective tissue and things like that is great. I like it. I always think of it as like meat gum, you just chewing and chewing and chewing. It's just this great meat flavor. I always liked that as a kid.
Bone in or boneless? He asked as well.
I said I like both, but I like the bone too. It's more primal. Yeah, and I like gnawing on the bone as well. Yeah.
Steve has the next question. What are your thoughts on adult stem cells being released after or around a 72-hour fast? In brackets, Bart K has mentioned this. So,
that's not something that I've looked too deeply into. I'm more of sort of like the big picture sort of kind of guy. Like, this is just how we're supposed to eat, and this is just biologically what we're supposed to do. And it's cool to find out like all the different things that our bodies do during that time. But at the end of the day, I'm just happy that my body does it. I just let it do its thing. I also don't know if that's comparing a 72-hour fast on a standard diet with carbohydrates versus 72-hour fast versus a fasting mimicking diet like ketogenic diet, like a carnivore diet. And is there a difference? A lot of these tests with a fasting mimicking diet, we have a lot of tests or studies that look at fasting and show a lot of benefit, like stem cell release. And they test these against a fasting mimicking diet, right? They call it, so you're mimicking fasting by going into a fasting metabolism, which is just ketosis, right? So they actually find that you can actually get the same effects just from being in a fasting mimicking diet, right? So it's really more about the metabolism that you're in rather than abstaining from eating and depriving your body of nutrients. It's more that you're keeping away things that are harming your body, and then you get your body works better. So I've spoken to people about fasting. I should talk to Bart K. I don't know. I mean, if anyone's going to know about these studies, he would. But a lot of people, like Dr. Jaquish, who is very knowledgeable in this, they haven't really known about any studies like comparing like keto diet to just fasting, and is there much of a difference? The only studies that really look at that are the fasting mimicking diet studies, looking at fasting mimicking diet versus fasting. And in those studies, depending on what you're looking at, I haven't seen one that looks specifically for adult stem cells, but those ones that they found that you actually have the same benefits from fasting mimicking diet as a fasting diet. And sometimes you actually had better effects from a fasting mimicking diet because you're still getting nutrients, you're still getting meat, you're getting things that you need and that your body wants, and you're also eliminating out all this other stuff your body doesn't want, and that kicks you off into this abnormal metabolism that your body doesn't want to be in. And so, when you're in ketosis, when you're on a keto diet, a fasting mimicking diet, you'll still release stem cells. You'll still go through autophagy, and your body will clean up these senile cells and just sort of clean house. And your body's going to do that anyway. And I think that you just eat meat and just let your body get on with it. And I wouldn't have any reason to doubt that your body's just going to be doing that and releasing stem cells just as it would if you were fasting. So, but that's something I should talk to Bart about, because maybe he has some information that shows that actually just not eating at all is better than eating meat during that time, or is it just a metabolic thing? It's a good question, but you get most of the benefits just from not eating carbs and not eating other plant junk that we're not really designed to eat, and just eating the right things.
This is a general question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the antioxidant
tocopherol
as an ingredient in food?
So tocopherol is just vitamin E. So vitamin E is good, and so if it comes in your food, then that's great. It's it's a vitamin that we need, that's good for us, and that's great. There's just a one thing that I would say about tocopherol is, and it could be tocopherol, it could be tocopherol acetate, it could be called by a number of different things. Obviously, people push around that vitamin E is really good for your skin. It is, but it can actually be mutated and changed with UV light. And so it's actually not a good idea to have moisturizer or sunscreen or lotion or even just vitamin E put on your skin and then go out in the sun. You can put it on after the sun, and that can help protect your skin and help your skin recover from the exposure to UV light. But when you go in the UV light, it can actually damage the vitamin E and can actually mutate it into something that's actually quite harmful for your skin, and it actually increases your risk of skin cancer by 20-fold. Okay, so that was I don't have a study for that. That was just taught to me by the professor of dermatology when I was in medical school, and I've just of the entire module of dermatology, that's the only thing I ever remembered. So it just sort of stuck with me. But that's just something that I always remember. So I always keep an eye out for tocopherol anytime I'm looking at moisturizers, or back when I never used sunblock anyway. I never really was a big fan of that. That was another thing with sunblock. I use a ton of chemicals, and like, what do these chemicals do? Okay, they block the UV light, but what else do they do? They have other properties, and they soak into your skin, and they get in your body, and they have other things that they do to you, and they're not necessarily good for you. And I remember learning as a kid, we never used anything more than SPF 15 when I was a kid. My mom was like, yeah, after this, it doesn't really do much benefit, and you can get all these other chemicals. It's not good for you. So we would never use anything more than SPF 15 living in Southern California. And then we relearned that when I was in medical school. So the only two things that I remember from dermatology was that after SPF 15 blocks 85.5% of the UV light. And so that's pretty much as good as you're going to get. And you get up to like SPF 30, it's blocking off 99%. And then 50 is 99.3%. And then SPF 70 is 99.5%. And SPF 90 is 99.7%. So you're getting diminishing returns. You're not really getting much bang for your buck. And you're getting like 5 times the amount of chemicals to get that SPF. So it's it's just, there's no point, and so if you're going to use sunscreen, which I don't, I just use tallow at this point and just keep my skin moisturized and healthy, and my body takes care of the rest. But if you were to use it, anything over SPF 15 is probably not a good idea. And also look on the back or on the front for vitamin E or tocopherol or anything like that, because I would just avoid that in general when I go into the sun. But after the sun is great. And in your food, it's fine. I wouldn't add it. I don't think you need to, pour vitamin E oil on your food or anything. But yeah, if it's in there, it's great. Yeah, vitamin E is good.
Okay. Does carnivore help MND?
So motor neuron disease is that's a good question. There's no real data on that. There's anecdotes, and there are people that that have, had some benefit from them. You're going to benefit, right? So there's like 1,000 different reasons, 1,000 different ways that you're going to benefit from, getting on a proper human diet, a proper biologically appropriate diet. Okay. Your body's just going to work better in a lot of ways. And so it's going to benefit you in a lot of ways anyway, even if it doesn't help the MND. At the moment, it's just anecdotal. There have been people, because I do get a lot of messages and we talk to a lot of people. I'm in a lot of these forums, and there are people that have benefited from that we've seen. Is it because their body's just doing a lot better because they're just healthier in general in a lot of other ways, or is it because their disease process is improving? I don't know. That's something we need to study, need to look at. But proper human nutrition is still proper human nutrition, even if you can't reverse something horrible like MND. So it's still beneficial to eat an appropriate diet and let your body be as healthy as it can be genetically. Okay. All right. So Olivia she sent a couple more questions in email, so that's fine. So
this is the last one here.
Yeah.
Does vitamin D need to be taken with fat for absorption?
It's better. It's better too, because it's a fat soluble vitamin, and like the other fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin K, these are good to take in solute with fat. That's why they're generally like vitamin D would be in like an oil base, right? Same with vitamin E. You can just get straight vitamin E oil as well, but like vitamin D will come, and you have to look at the capsules. Like if you're taking like a supplement, because vitamin D, like they almost always use stupid seed oils like sunflower oil or something like that. And because most people that just eat meat or omnivores or whatever, they don't care if it has some sunflower oil, whatever. But like a vegan really cares if it's like, plant-based, animal-based, gelatin or whatever, so you'll see all vegan capsules and all that sort of stuff, because it's just no one else normally cares, but the vegans care. And so it's just getting a larger market pool. But now like everything's sort of done that. And now you can't find things that are actually in normal oils and normal fats. They're always in these solution with sunflower oil. So that's another reason maybe, vitamin D supplementation isn't a great idea unless you like actually need it. But you'll get a ton of vitamin D from animal fat. So, and like, grass-fed butter, plenty of vitamin D in that. So you usually don't need to supplement with vitamin D on a carnivore diet. Okay.
There's a question just here.
There's a question there.
I have a friend who suffers from early onset Parkinson's disease. Do you have any good references that could help me convince him to try carnivore?
So there have been studies with keto showing that keto can help with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and autism and migraines and seizures and psychiatric disorders and so many more. So that we do have studies on. We don't really have very good robust studies just on a carnivore diet itself. There are a lot of different pieces of information and just facts about the human body and how we work that you sort of cobble together. You like pieces to a puzzle. You say like, oh, okay, like humans are carnivores, and this is the way we should be eating. At least that's the puzzle I'm looking at. And maybe there'll be other pieces that are just like, oh no, that's actually just a hoof to this other thing. So it's but we don't really have a lot of big studies that look at carnivore specifically. However, if you look at the studies on ketogenic diet, there is a benefit at higher saturated fat, higher LDL cholesterol, protective against Alzheimer's, protective against Parkinson's. And so, and then different plant toxins like lectins can actually track up your vagus nerve, get into your brain, into the substantia nigra, and damage those cells. Those are the cells that secrete dopamine into the the different parts of your brain that sort of disinhibit movement. There's a whole big complicated pathway called the direct and indirect pathway that all sort of correspond, that correlates through your thalamus, and your thalamus is trying to, tell your brain to like, yes, move, go do something. You have all these little other parts of the brain saying, stop it, so you don't have like unnecessary movements or like, just uncontrollable sort of movements called chorea. So like Hutchinson's chorea, however you want to pronounce it, depending on what country you're in. And so the thalamus has to do with that. And then the dopamine goes up, hits these areas, inhibits them from inhibiting the thalamus, and the thalamus gets a signal that says, okay, go move. And so that has to do with initiation of movement. So when you take away the substantia nigra and they can't release dopamine, then there's always inhibiting the thalamus. So the thalamus is just telling your body, don't move, don't move, don't move, don't move, don't move. So it's really hard to initiate movement and get going. And that's the classical physical signs of Parkinsonism, is that you find you're sort of rigid and you just sort of locked in, and it's very hard to start moving, and you'll have some tremors and things like that as well. So lectins can track up your vagus nerve and actually get into the substantia nigra and damage them. If you already have Parkinson's, is that going to help you by getting rid of this? Well, it may not reverse all the damage that was there, but it can stop more damage from happening. There was a study in Denmark, I believe Denmark, where they took a look at everybody who'd had a vagotomy, where they cut the vagus nerve up from the gut, and for like a 20-year period. So there's just like thousands and thousands and thousands of people who had a vagotomy, and they just looked at them and compared them to the rest of the population and say, okay, what are these guys' chances of getting Parkinson's? And they found that the people that had their vagus nerves cut were 66% less likely to get Parkinson's. Okay, so that's interesting. There's other things that are going to contribute to Parkinson's. That's not the only cause, but it appears that that's a contributing factor. So increasing your saturated fat, increasing your cholesterol, getting rid of lectins, getting rid of carbohydrates, and letting your brain run on its proper fuel, which is ketones. These are all going to contribute to proper brain health and help anyone with Parkinson's. And will it reverse Parkinson's? It's not going to reverse all the damage that's already done for whatever reason. There might be other disease processes that don't have anything to do with food that are going on that you may not be able to stop or reverse. But all those ones that are contributory from not eating the right things and eating some of the wrong things, those are going to be helped. And again, there are 1,000 other ways that going on a proper human diet is going to be beneficial. And so they will see those benefits as well. Yeah. Great. All right. So I'll find some of the questions again that Olivia sent. Just bear with me one moment. Okay. I'll read that.
Yeah. A question from Mike. Question about protein to fat and VV and the nutrition our ancestors would have received from their fat stores when doing naturally extended fats in ketosis.
Fasts in ketosis.
Fasts, yeah, in ketosis.
Question about protein to fat and VV. I'm not sure what you mean by VV. Maybe you can type in there and let me know. Question about protein to fat and VV. Okay. Nutritional ancestors would have received from their fat stores when doing it. Yeah. So, what's that? Oh, you can read that part. Okay, read the next one.
Yeah, I understand that when storing, the body converts protein to fat, but only those that it can't use for building. E.g., if 50 of every amino acid is present, but only 37 of arginine, then only 37 complete profiles can be used for building, and the 13 extra of all others will become energy, possibly, and if not, then stored as fat. And I understand it to be that is how to excess protein becomes fat instead of new construction or repair. Am I correct?
So the thing is that you need a certain complement of amino acids. Amino acids are not the same and they're not interchangeable. You can sort of make and create and sort of adjust them. If you have certain aminos, you can sort of turn them into other aminos. You can sort of build different proteins. Some you can't. Those would be the essential Amino acids, those are ones you have to get from your diet. You can't make those yourself. Other ones you can make. So it depends on the protein. And sometimes you can take those proteins that you have excess of, and you can turn it into other non-essential proteins that you may need. There's a bunch of them. I think like lysine is another one where it's like a rate limiting step. So if you have sort of think of it as like creating like a barrel, right? And you have these little planks that come up and make a barrel, right? So if you have all these planks and they're all the right length to make a normal size barrel, but then just one of them is just short, well, it's going to leak out, and like all the water in that barrel is going to leak out at that point. It doesn't matter that all the other ones are the right size. That one's not. And so it's true that you do have rate limiting steps. Now, some of those things you can make and you can sort of build up, but that's why protein is so important, because it's not just you need enough grams. You need specific ones and specific portions. And so that's true. Sometimes if you're going to have sort of excess proteins, you can turn them into fat as well. Most of these things, you generally turn amino acids into glucose as a part of it's generally like a demand driven reaction as opposed to a substrate driven reaction, right? So I have this much protein, my body just goes, it just turns that all into glucose. That doesn't really happen. It's generally if your body needs glucose and this is the excess. Generally, you don't use much protein as energy. You use some, but generally you won't. Well, you certainly won't catabolize your own muscle tissue generally to make energy unless you've like completely run out of fat and you're just completely emaciated, and then you get into big trouble. But yeah, you will predominantly use your fats. And so if you're in a fast, going back to the beginning of the question, our ancestors are running on fat. And so you eat a bunch of food, your body uses the protein to rebuild and repair, and then whatever is extra will get stored in your fat, and that's your gas tank. That's what you're running on for the next couple of days. And then, you go back to the gas station and you fill up. And that's what eating is, right? So you don't need to eat every day. You don't need to eat multiple times a day, certainly. And our ancestors didn't always do that. Some did. We had the big mammoth hunters. You took down a herd of mammoth and you dried all the meat and you had that. I mean, these people were eating for years, potentially. And generally they would have an abundance of food if they got one of these big kills. They called it like a drop, like the Native Americans did that with buffalo. So it was like a buffalo drop. And so the big herds of buffalo, hundreds of millions of buffalo would be coming through. They'd scare off, a few hundred off of a cliff. They'd all fall and die, and they would eat on that for the year. That would feed their whole village and their whole community for the rest of the year. And so that's what we have evidence of our ancestors doing that back like millions of years with mammoths. And so this is a long standing tradition of hunting is the drop method. And so, you had people that had an absolute abundance of food, but they didn't necessarily eat every day. They didn't necessarily need to, so you just fill up and eat a whole bunch, like the Mongols with Genghis Khan, the Mongol horde. It was very regular for them to go 5 days without eating, and then they'd eat 10 pounds of horse meat and drink horse blood and things like that. Maybe get drunk on fermented mare's milk, and and then that was fine. And it actually gave a huge advantage in a war setting, because they didn't have cook fires. They didn't have to stop all the time. They didn't have to stop 3 times a day for food to boil up a bunch of mash and grains and feed that out to the men and then keep going. They could just go and go and go and go and go. And they didn't have campfires. They didn't have any way for the enemy to see like, okay, there's a big, massive group of people coming towards me, because you see all the smoke, you see all the fires at night, but they knew exactly where you were. And so these people, it was just like, an absolute terror being on the other side during this time, because they would just come through and just come out of nowhere and just sack you. You had no idea when they were coming. So there's a huge advantage to that. And yeah, so you eat fat and meat, and your body rebuilds the protein that it needs, and then you put the rest in fat, and you run on the fat. So you're running on your fat stores, and that's what we're supposed to do, and that's what you will do if you're on a carnivore diet. So, yeah, go for it.
Read that one,
please.
Does the fat release later when in ketosis then have the full amino profile being released, or is there another process that occurs?
That's a good question. It's an excellent question. That's something I'll have to look into, but we'll be able to make the aminos that we're able to make. I mean, some aminos are, like I said, essential, but at the same time, it's there are stories of people like that guy in the UK who just didn't eat for 9 months and lost like 500 pounds and just took like a multivitamin every month and just drank water. And, and his skin actually shrank down with him. So he didn't have like loose folds or anything like that. And, he wasn't eating anything. Obviously his body was able to, either make the protein that he needed or just didn't need a lot of protein. You might not be able to, build a bunch of muscle if you're not able to get in all of the requisite aminos, but obviously whatever he had on him at the time, whatever he was able to make was enough to sustain what he was doing, which is interesting, which is very, very interesting. So but that's something that, as far as I know, you would still only be able to make the aminos that, you're able to make. And then the essential amino acids, you just have to sort of recycle those. Because the reason that they're essential is because our body, we can't make them. And so, so I would imagine that the ones that we are, that are essential, we'll have to just sort of recycle and sort of keep track of and reuse. So but that's a guess, but that would sort of fit with that anyway.
Okay. It's very hard to read with the light in your face.
It's all right.
Okay, this next one's from, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name properly. Matthew?
Yeah.
Okay. Similar to Mike's question, I seem to remember Dr. Berry saying that the fat we store is contained within
adipocytes.
Adipocytes, of course, which are not 100% fat. They also contain protein, otherwise they'd not be cells. Mm-hmm. And so when the adipocytes shrink, losing fat, they get smaller and protein is liberated to be reused. Is this correct?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've looked at that, but I mean, it's certainly, I would imagine your body needs to be able to store protein as well. And so, it's probably that's the case. That's something I'll have to look into again. It's been a long time since I've looked into that. I mean, that's like college years. So I don't know exactly, but I would expect that's the case. Yeah. Close it back here. So and vice versa. That's what it was. Yeah. So it was about protein, fat, and vice versa. Yeah. Okay. So so I think that's it. Did anybody else have any other questions? I guess in the comments we have a couple. So Roger asks or says that 2 months into carnivore, beef, salt, and water, I get a bout of watery diarrhea mid-morning. Bile supplements don't help. Lipase doesn't help. Any ideas? Otherwise, I feel great. Well, there can be first of all, I wouldn't take any bile supplements. I don't think you need to take any supplements, lipase either. If generally you can just change the amount of fat that you're eating, and that can control that. If you're not, drinking coffee or taking caffeine or using artificial sweeteners or anything else that can be, act as a laxative in your body. If it's just you and you're just doing the same thing that you were doing, then your body's probably just adjusting to the amount of, you could be responding to something else and just be a bit unwell. Or it could be that you're just eating more fat than the body wants. The other side of it is when you eat way too little fat, then you can actually get quite watery, irritative diarrhea. And sometimes you can get even called spurious diarrhea, or it's overflow diarrhea, where you actually get so constipated because you didn't get nearly any fat, so you got this hard, dry lump, and then there's just this watery stuff going around it because that's It's just all liquid, and it can't push this cork out. And then so like the watery stuff comes out around that. And that can happen. And then you go through alternate bouts of constipation and watery stools. And so those are different things to look out for. Yeah, that's a good point that Olivia says. Like if you tag me and say at Anthony Chaffee, it highlights for me, so I can actually pick it out in the chat.
I think there's one up here.
Which one? It's hard to believe that there are thousands of times more natural plant toxins than synthetics. Yep, it's crazy. Do you feel this science is pretty well settled? Can you share Bruce Ames and any other research? Yeah, so Bruce Ames was a professor at UC Berkeley, and he was looking at specifically, in that paper that I talk about in The Plants Are Trying to Kill You, specifically was talking about alar. They were they banned a number of pesticides in the 80s, saying, oh, these things are poisonous. They are. That is the whole point. You're trying to poison bugs and other animals from eating this stuff. That's the point. Plants do it too. That's kind of their whole thing. And so he was looking at this, and he showed and he identified different toxins that were in plants. He found 42 different toxins, and 20 of which were found to be carcinogenic in animal models like rats. And there are far more toxic chemicals in these plants, far more. When I was taking cancer biology, 11 years after that study was published, we had found 136 just in Brussels sprouts, right? Just Brussels sprouts. And Ames had found 20 in all the plants he was looking at overall. Okay. And so however many were in each plant, I don't know. But that's what they found. So obviously they found a lot more. And so we looked at them by weight, right? Just the amount of, the moles that are in there, and compared that to how many the pesticides that were sprayed on them. And there was way more natural toxins that were in there. Probably even more than that, because he only knew about a select few, where there were more that he didn't know about. So I think that is pretty well established. The idea is that, okay, well, how bad are those things? There's more of them, but does that mean that they're worse for you? Well, he did that as well. He did that part as well. He found that looking at the carcinogenic nature of these things, he found that things like mushrooms were 500 times more likely to cause cancer in rats than the alar, right? So at least for alar, the plant toxins are way worse. Is that the same for glyphosate? I don't know. That's a good study to do as well. I mean, that stuff's pure poison as well. But the point is that all these things are bad, and that it's not just humans that have gummed up the works, and it's just like we're in just the Garden of Eden, and it's only the things that we've done to that's made plants bad. Plants are bad because they are bad, because they don't want you to eat them. They die if you eat them. Most plants will kill you. Most plants will kill most animals. A cow will get killed by most plants. A giraffe will get killed by most plants. There are 340,000 species of plant in the world. Koalas eat one. Pandas eat one. Cows, horses, grazing animals, they eat grass. That's it. They eat specific grasses. They don't even eat all the different kinds of grasses. So it's very, very specific what animals eat. Animal diet, a species-specific, a species-appropriate diet is very specific, and especially in herbivores, because they can really only tolerate certain plants, and other plants will kill them. And so it's not surprising to me that these things have more poisons, and they're more poisonous than the pesticides we spray on them. I mean, most of these plants will just kill you. So there's a ton of poison, and this poison is very potent, right? I mean, like hemlock, like water hemlock is like the most poisonous plant in North America. Like half a leaf will kill an adult, right? So kids like sort of chewing on the stems and things like that have died. So this stuff is toxic, and it's meant to be. This is not an accident. And so, you just have to be cognizant of that. And yeah, and the pesticides that we spray on them, like, yeah, they're not good for a reason. They kill the things that are trying to eat your crop. That's the point. But you know what also kills the things trying to eat your crop? Your crop, because that's how they're designed. And that's what GMOs are, right? Because there are animals and insects that actually are adapted to being able to eat certain poisons safely, right? And so you put in the ones that they're not able to break down and eat safely. And now you've made a more robust plant that's not going to be able to be eaten by other things. But guess what? It's now even more toxic. So that's the problem that you run into when you eat plants, and then when you deal with all these things in general.
Is there any benefit to not eating close to bedtime, or is that a myth?
I'm going to say that for the class.
Yeah. So someone has asked, is there any benefit to not eating close to bedtime, or is that a myth?
So that's I think my views on that are that the eating close to bedtime thing is really only in the context of if you're eating carbohydrates. If you're eating carbohydrates, your metabolism's all screwed up. Your insulin goes up. Insulin will block growth hormone. Well, it blocks the action of growth hormone. Growth hormone is at peak secretion levels are 2 hours after you go to sleep, and throughout your rest. This helps you grow and rebuild and repair from the day. And so when you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, well, you're stuffing in a bunch of fat. Everyone knows that. But what you're also doing is you're blocking the action of growth hormone, which is one of the key hormones in your body. And and throughout the day, if you're eating a bunch of, that's the thing too. When you think about like bodybuilders, oh, you have to eat carbs, you have to eat carbs, you have to eat carbs. Like, well, okay, but you're blocking your own growth hormone. So it's a good thing these guys are just taking like Liver King levels of growth hormone, because their carbohydrates are blocking its action. So they need a whole bunch of it. That could have been exactly why. I don't know if people saw that, but they talked about the Liver King emails, how he was talking about he was just taking like an insane amount of growth hormone, to the point that Derek from More Plates More Dates was saying that he knows guys training for the Mr. Olympia that are on less growth hormone than Liver King was. Okay, that's nuts, right? So, but dude's drinking maple syrup. All right, so that's blocking the action of the growth hormone he's taking. He's just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just like, I'm a hyper under responder, hypo responder. And so, well, you're shooting yourself in the foot by eating a bunch of carbs, jacking up your insulin, and blocking that action. So when you're eating carbohydrates and you go to sleep, then you're going to do that. You're going to block your own growth hormone. You're going to screw up your own circadian rhythm and your hormonal cycle. And so I think that's a detriment on top of all the other detriments you get. When you're eating a carnivore diet, it doesn't matter, right? In fact, it's actually optimal, because you go throughout the day, you're not eating, you're charged, you're ready to go. Your body's like, go out, hunt, kill, get something, and get your food, get your nutrients. And then you get that food and your body just goes, right, shut it down, rest and digest. And you go into that rest and digest mode, and you naturally become lethargic and tired and sleepy, and you just feel wonderful, and you just drift off to sleep. Just like a lion, they take down a buffalo, they eat it, and they pass out for 16 hours. There's a reason for that. And so I think if you're on a carnivore diet or even keto, then it's actually fine to eat right before you go to sleep. That's what I do. I eat big meals. Right, my biggest meal will be right before I go to bed at the end of the day. Because if I eat earlier than that, I feel much more lethargic. I don't have as much energy throughout the day, because my body's saying, what are you doing? We already ate. We already have it. Just chill out. Take it easy. Go to sleep. Have a nap. And I can't, like I have things to do, and I don't get very good workouts as well. So I find that I feel much better throughout the day. I have much better energy throughout the day, and I sleep better at night when I eat later on. And I think that's why. So yeah, Paul, that's great. Thank you, Olivia, for putting up that research. That and many, many other links are in most of my videos. So any of the ones talking about that, or plants having toxins, or the carnivore versus vegan diet, and all those other things, look in the description of my videos, and I'll put it up here as well. I'll put resources in there. So if I'm talking about specific things, specific studies, or like a specific topic, I'll put like just a bunch of studies and links for that topic to support that, sort of my bibliography. And the Plants Are Trying to Kill You talk that I did and at Low Carb Down Under, I don't have control of that page, so I didn't get to put in my bibliography, but there is a bibliography at the end. And so the last slide, you can pause it on there and you can sort of see, you have to type it in yourself. I'm sorry, but it's they're most of them are there on that last one, and that one is too. So, okay. Another question from Inlight Connect. It says pattern. Hoped carnivore might help with
1 month in.
1 month in. I can start the day super stoked and productive. Then I eat and lose all enthusiasm and focus, usually around 11 or 12. There you go. Perfect example illustrating my point. You eat during the day, you're going to get lethargic. Your body's going to say like, yep, shut it down, go to sleep, chill out. And that's exactly what's happening. So if you're going to eat during the day, if you have to, then I would eat a partial meal, like a half meal, a quarter meal, something like that, just something to take the edge off, but not enough to like fill up and get lethargic like that, because I that happens. That is what happens. And and if you take down a buffalo and you eat a whole bunch of things, you're not going around running marathons after that. And so that's why I eat towards the end of the day. And if I eat during the day, like if I'm working out a lot, then my body just wants more meat, and because it's trying to build more meat, and so I need to eat more than once. But I'll have to eat sort of half meals, or else I'm screwed. Or even like 3/4 meals, but just don't fill up, don't max yourself out, or you will get lethargic and you will want to go to sleep. From Natalie, how do you explain to a vegetarian, vegan, or otherwise that we are not adapted to eat vegetables like animals are, even to specific veggies and fruits? Well, it's you just sort of talk about what I spoke about earlier, which is that food is very species specific, and you have to have the machinery to break down certain chemicals and safely, and to extract certain nutrients. We don't have those machinery. There are a lot of nutrients that are bound up in plants we cannot access, and that's on purpose, because the plant does not want you to profit by eating it. And so it has all these nutrients. And so you look, oh, wow, look at all these nutrients that are in blah, blah, blah. Yeah, fine. They are not available to you. And that's because the plant wants to lock that away so that any old animal that comes and eats them doesn't benefit from that and get all these sorts of things. So you have to have like the hardware to break these things down. So you can sort of explain that and just say, hey, these are species specific, and point out all the animals and the very specific diet that they eat, and point out that you have animals in the zoo. If they eat anything that they don't eat in the wild, they get very sick, but they get the same sickness we do. They get so-called human diseases, right? Obesity, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, liver disease, arthritis, autoimmune issues. They all get the same thing. So do dogs and cats. It's because we're not feeding them what we're supposed to be feeding them, which is meat. And you can also point out to them that even if we were adapted, and even if it was appropriate for us to eat plants, none of the plants that we're eating now are what we evolved on, because none of the plants we're eating now existed when we were evolving. All the plants that we're eating now are bioengineered, either through forced selection, or bioengineering with like GMOs and things like that, or crossbreeding, all sorts of different things. So none of these things are natural. None of these things existed 10,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, certainly not 50,000 years ago. And so these are not things that we would have evolved with. No animal on Earth eats the variety of plants that we do. None. There isn't a single animal on Earth that eats as many varieties of plants that we do. So even if we're supposed to eat plants, we are not supposed to eat all the plants that we're eating. Okay, so which ones are we supposed to be eating? Well, it's hard to say, because none of these things existed 50,000 years ago, or even in the Garden of Eden, or whenever, because we created all the crops that we're eating now. Like none of these things are natural. None of the fruits that we're eating are natural. They're all adulterated in some way, adulterated. And so that's where I'd start anyway. Yeah.
Score BCMD.
Yeah.
Hi, carnivore, 3 months in. Shouldn't my body have adapted by now to start using my fat storage as an energy source and thus reducing the swollen fat cells? Cellulite.
Yeah. I mean, look, you are using your fat stores. If you are eating a strict carnivore diet, you're not drinking any milk, you're not using a lot of dairy, you're not using artificial sweeteners, and you're doing other things that are healthy. You're eating enough. You're getting enough meat. You're getting enough fat. You're getting enough sleep. You're taking care of yourself in other ways. Just by not eating carbohydrates and anything else that will screw with your metabolism, like artificial sweeteners or monk fruit sweetener, sugar, or stevia, or all those other products that are, it's technically not sugar, therefore it's okay. No, it's not okay. It's absolutely not okay. Just don't eat them. Don't eat any of that stuff. Just eat meat. But if you are just doing that, then you'll go into ketosis in 24 hours because your insulin will drop down to a certain level, and then you'll start running on your fat cells. And so that will happen. It's 3 months. I mean, I wasn't even, very overweight when I started back in on carnivore this last time. I had definitely had excess fat and excess weight, but I wasn't, you could still see my six pack, even though I was 270 something pounds, and like, I'm like 230 now. So like, that's a big difference. And, but I wasn't all that fat. It took way longer than 3 months for me to get down to a steady state and a steady body fat percentage. I think it was like 6 or 8 months, something like that, before I sort of stabilized. And, and I didn't have all that, it wasn't all that much, to lose. So, you really need to be, just mindful of that. And also, just listen to your body and just focus on feeling good. Being on the scale and just focusing on the weight is not a great way of doing this, because you're going to replace fat with muscle. So the scale may not change all that much. And that can get very discouraging. You say, well, I'm not losing fat, I'm not losing weight, right? Not the same thing. You'll be losing fat, and you don't necessarily lose weight at the same time. So I would just be mindful of that. Just focus on your health, focus on healing, focus on feeling good, and just focus on this being part of your life, and not worrying about it. And just the rest will come. The health will come. The health is the most important. The weight will come. The fat loss will come. It will happen. Just eat what you're supposed to eat. Eat as much as your body wants you to eat, and it will happen eventually. Some people take a lot longer to lose fat. You look at Kelly Hogan. She actually put on weight for the first 6 months, but she felt great. She felt better than she ever had, and she was doing a lot better. She's like, okay, I'm just going to trust the process. I've got all these people, they've done it all before, and like, I believe it. I believe what they're telling me, and so I'm just going to trust it. After about 6 months, something just snapped, and all of a sudden just started shredding excess fat. And she's been very slender ever since. And you look at her and be like, she looks like one of those people that is just like, you've never been fat in your life. You've never been overweight in your life. You've never struggled with weight your whole life. There's no, so you can't talk. She did. She struggled with her weight, quite a lot when she was teenager and young adult, but she hasn't since, and that's why. So, just give it time, let it happen. Just let your body do its thing. It will come. It will happen. Just be patient and focus on your health more than anything. From Rita.
Things are not running smoothly. I have high blood pressure. I am new to carnivore this month, eating butter and fatty meat, tired, feel better when I fast, and don't eat.
Okay, well, that's fine. You don't have to force feed yourself. Certainly don't do that. If meat and fat don't taste good, don't eat. Your body's telling you, hey, we don't need anymore. Sometimes you'll eat a bit and you'll think like, wow, that's not enough. But then you try eating more like meat and eggs in your body, and it just tastes horrible. And you're like, okay, I don't like that. Stop eating. Okay, your body's giving you negative feedback and saying, don't eat this, right? As far as high blood pressure, so that most of the time that can significantly improve on even just a ketogenic diet. A lot of times this is from insulin insensitivity in your arteries, because it your arteries respond to insulin. So you hit insulin and they expand a bit, and so that will reduce your blood pressure. And now it's just like doesn't do so much insulin for so long. Just like, I don't trust you. I don't trust your signals. I'm not listening to you anymore. It takes off all these insulin receptors, and so then it's just like, nope, not listening, not listening, not listening, and it just stays, small and rigid, and then the blood pressure goes up. So when you get rid of the carbs, you start getting more sensitive to your insulin. Then they become more compliant, and they start actually, responding and growing, contracting in response to different physiological measures that your body knows how to take care of much more than we do. And so that will help. Being a bit tired, there's a lot of reasons for that. There are a lot of reasons that could be that. I actually do an episode on that, one of the How to Carnivore episodes on my YouTube channel. Like why we get tired, like frequently asked questions sort of thing. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's you can find it on there. And we talk about, why people generally get tired. Sometimes people will drink milk or have a bit of carbohydrates. They'll get tired. But at the same time, like there can be other things too. Like if you eat a lot, you're going to get tired. And so if you're eating, bigger meals in the beginning of the day, your body's just going to say, hey, shut it down, sleep. Like you say, you feel better when you fast. Okay, so fast during the day, eat at night. It's not even really fasting, really, because you generally don't need to eat more than once a day. Especially when you have lose, your body will just want less and fat, because it doesn't need to do what it wants to do, and it will start using your fat stores as well. So try eating at the end of the day, add an extra time or in the morning. That can help wake you up. It can help get you going. But whenever you can work out, just do that. I find that I work out better later in the day. That's just how I feel, just because I'm probably just used to it. I've always hated waking up. Always waking up good for me. But then I always loved after school sports, and always played sports later on. And so whenever you want to work out, just do it then. And just make sure you're eating enough. Make sure you're getting enough water. Eat later in the day. Don't eat any carbs, drink any milk, things like that. So a lot of little things that you can do. But the main thing is you just keep going with it, because that's another thing about being keto adapted. Sometimes it can take up to 3 weeks. Usually it doesn't take more than that. Almost everyone will be keto adapted after 3 weeks. You'll still be in ketosis after 24 hours, as long as you're not, eating any carbs at all. But it can take, up to 2-3 weeks for your body to get used to running on these new fuel sources. Okay. And so just keep with it, stick with it. If you're tired, sometimes you're not eating enough. Sometimes you're not eating enough fat. You're eating butter and fatty meat, and that's great. Make sure you're getting enough of it. Okay. And just eat later in the day. So those are a bunch of little tips. See if you can maybe go back and write them down and try to use all of them. But I actually go through a lot of those in that video, so you can try and find that video as well. So this says, we had our first Discord meetup yesterday, and very good. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Mike and Crystal met up in Vegas. That's awesome. So that's good. I really like that the Discord group has sort of taken off the way it has, and that everyone's finding it helpful and a nice community, and everyone's getting along and being nice to each other. That's really good. That makes me happy. What's the other question?
I had from Paul Ladendorf. Mm-hmm. I had a digestive analysis done, and it showed I was not breaking down protein and fat well. Would you recommend a comprehensive digestive enzyme with protease, lipase, and bile?
Yeah. Well, it just depends. If that's something like a permanent issue that you're just not able to do, sure. But I wouldn't take bile. Your body makes enough bile. You're going to add in bile, and you're going to absorb more fat than your body actually wants, and you'll run into trouble. And you'll get more fat than your body wants, and then that can be too much fat. You can actually, then have more than energy than you want. You put on weight, things like that. And the proteases and lipases, potentially, that's not going to hurt you if you're just taking a little bit here and there. But generally people catch up, right? So if you aren't eating as much fat, protein, etc. Previously, and then you go into and you start eating a lot more of these things, then it can take a bit for your pancreas to go like, oh, okay, yeah, we need this stuff. So I don't know, how long have you been doing carnivore, Paul? Because generally that will sort itself out in the first few weeks. If it's been months and months and you're still not making a whole bunch of it, and you're feeling symptomatic and you're feeling that you're not getting enough and you're not feeling well or whatever, then yeah, maybe. But if you're feeling good and you're eating and your body's doing well, then I don't think you need to worry about it. Just let your body do its thing. Rita lost my sound. Well, it'll be on the recording, Rita, and also I did a how to carnivore video where Simon and I talked about some of the common sort of frequently asked questions and pitfalls, and one of them was energy and getting enough, and some people being a bit tired on a carnivore diet. So Paul, so just over a month. I give it some time. Your body is probably now making making more and more of the pancreatic enzymes that you need. Certainly going to be doing enough bile. I wouldn't worry about the bile, extra bile, just because your body makes a certain amount of bile because that's how much fat it wants to absorb. So if you're adding in bile, you're going to absorb more fat than your body wants. You also get constipated because you need that excess fat that your body can't absorb to get into the stools, and it keeps it soft. And so it's an important sort of process to sort of let your body do its thing and have a bit excess fat that your body can excrete. And also, unless you have some sort of like actual issue that your body is just incapable of making enough bile or making enough pancreatic enzymes, you have pancreas insufficiency, then I just let your body do its thing. It'll catch up, and whatever it gets to should be enough. But if you're worried about it, like in 3 months, maybe check it again and just see what happens. And again, if you're feeling good and you're not feeling like anything's wrong, just trust it and just let your body do its thing. Okay. All right. If anyone has any last minute questions, want to sneak them in before we wrap up, we can do that. Otherwise, we'll bid you adieu. Adieu. Okay. All right. So Olivia just says, just a message to all Patreons or all Patreon members who are not yet in the Discord chat, including all the new joiners. Please do join the community. There are instructions sort of pinned to the top of the Patreon homepage, and I'll tell you how to join the Discord, and that's an automatic sort of thing through the Patreon thing. So it'll link to the Patreon account and get you into this dedicated series of chat groups with all the different Discord or different Patreon members in just our Patreon community. And we talk about all sorts of different things. The book club, that's where you submit your questions for these live events if you want to get them answered, and many other things. And also just a nice way for people to chat and talk to each other and encourage each other and support each other through their health journey. So definitely do that and use that as a resource, because it's a very good one. So, okay. All right, everyone. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for everyone who came on. I hope that was beneficial and interesting for people. And thank you for everyone who submitted questions. And thank you very much for Elle for helping me out reading the questions. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So, okay. Thank you all very much, and have a good night or a good day. Take care.